Good afternoon, everyone. Eric the Racket Scientist here, and today I have for you something very interesting. I say that about everything, but today I really do have something that I think is extremely interesting. Now, I can't quite remember if I've ever featured a Redson racket on this channel, but if I haven't done that, or if you haven't watched my other videos, I'm sure I've mentioned it in some of my other videos that this brand called Redson, logo is just like capital R, supposedly designed in Japan but manufactured in Taiwan. It's a smaller brand, and outside of Taiwan, it's not super common and was really only introduced into the North American market in what I guess would be, right before COVID, so, late 2010s. And some unique things about this company are that they make a lot of interesting unique rackets with unique features that are not found in other rackets. And one example here is the Shape series, which is a series of rackets that have kind of golf ball like dimples on the frame, and the idea of that is supposed to reduce reduce swing time, or make the swing faster, kind of like a sword frame, but using the similar principles to a golf ball. And you may or may not know that the dimples on a golf ball are meant to make it actually fly faster. And why is that? I'm not going to go on a whole lecture about physics, but there's an idea of attached airflow that essentially lets fast moving air attach and be less turbulent on the wake side, the following side of an object, and that helps it move faster. And so that concept is applied here to some of the rackets, not all. The Shape series does tend to have these dimples. Another feature of Redson rackets that, so far as I've seen, is unique is the grommetless rackets. Now, if you look closely here, you'll see that the single pass grommets on this racket, they don't have grommets. So what does that do is it gives you a much better feeling on the strings, contact feeling. And I find that of all rackets, the contact feeling of these grommetless Redson rackets tends to be one of the most satisfying, and one of the ones, these are some of the rackets that I enjoy playing with the most for that reason. They have a few models, including the 3 that I have here, which I'll talk about in a second. I think they have 2 more. So they have about 5 or so models that feature this grommetless design. It's really only on their highest end rackets because the whole point of grommets is to kind of protect the frame of the racket, especially under higher tension. And having this grommetless design, the drawback would be that, the frame is definitely going to be more of a let's see, what's the word? Consumable, right? So it's like it has a finite lifespan, whereas a racket with grommets, if you're not stringing more than 30 pounds, should theoretically last kind of a lifetime. Like nothing on the racket is going to fail over time. Whereas if you're stringing over 30 pounds, grommets or not, your strings are eventually going to start digging into the frame, and you will need to retire the racket because you won't be able to string it anymore. And having no grommets here, very much caution against going above 28 pounds on these rackets. And even under that, it's possible that they will have a limited lifespan. But I think the trade-off is really worth it in my opinion. And again, out of all rackets I've ever used, these have some of the most satisfying contact and direct contact feeling, and by far sound the best out of any racket that I've ever used. What I also like about the Redson rackets is that they have this design philosophy that's very user-friendly for the amateur player. And when I say amateur, I don't mean like intermediate. I mean badminton players who do not play at the professional level. Okay, so I would be considered an amateur. Even your A-level players at your local tournament generally are considered amateurs, unless they play international challengers or BWF events. And the reason is that a lot of these rackets, they, unlike top-of-the-line Yonex, Victor, Li-Ning, are not super stiff, and they don't pursue super thin shafts or really small heads or whatever. They just stick with a very very easy to approach design of like medium stiff shaft with a head that has a pretty easy to hit sweet spot. And in my opinion, these rackets are also really great for learning the sport of badminton, because the contact feeling is so direct that it's very easy to tell when you're hitting the shuttle properly or not. Some rackets can tend to be a little bit more dull in terms of contact feeling. I guess in conclusion, while these might not be the most edgy, aggressive, powerful rackets, they certainly are the most user-friendly and reliable. When I say user-friendly, it's kind of what people really liked about, for example, the original Arc Saber 11 or today's Astrox 77 Pro. Very approachable rackets, used in all situations. And another little benefit that normally I wouldn't mention, but these rackets are also surprisingly durable. I've had some of these rackets sustain maximum swing clashes from Yonex rackets, and the Yonex rackets will break and then these will stay intact. Redson also has a very good warranty, and I think if it's in the warranty period, they will replace the racket without question. I think I've heard that even if you manually snap the racket, like if I just snap this in half and then I sent this to Redson and it were under the warranty period, they would just send me a new one. What are these models that I have in front of you here? So the one at the top is the first one that I ever got. It's the Redson SG. The SG stands for sounds good, which is a little silly. And but it really does sound good. Now this is a sword frame racket, and it does have some dimples. Okay, this was known as one of the more aggressive, if not the most aggressive racket in the Shape lineup, and Redson has I think 4 or 5 different racket series, and Shape is the one which I'm most familiar with and is most common. It's the one with the dimples. So you'll notice that this has a fully recessed frame, and it also has the grommetless design, and the shared grommets, the corner grommets, is it's actually a kind of a bumper, which is kind of interesting. This is a very fast swing racket because of the dimples and the sword frame. Fun fact, when you think sword frames, you think Victor with their Brave Sword rackets, but I did some digging in Redson's history, and it turns out that Redson was the first company to actually patent the sword frame design before Victor began manufacturing Brave Sword rackets. So just a little fun fact for you racket nerds out there. This is a slight head heavy, I would say, racket. This is a 3U model too, as I feel, when you're going even balance, sometimes 3U is a little better to add back that stability and kind of give you back some of that power that you lose from lack of head weight. And the 3U Redson models tend to be a little on the light side. So this here is the Shape 01 MG, which is the grommetless variation of their most popular, most well-known model, which is the Shape 01 grommetless design. This one is, as you can see, not fully recessed, but it has a fair amount of recess going up until this point. So it's got the dimples. This is not a sword frame, so this is in kind of a traditional oval frame shape, but with the dimples. And this one is a little more headlight, but has very similar specs. You can see that they actually have the same frame shape here to the SG, same string pattern. And this one is also 3U, and this is more even balance. And this one is, in general, very maneuverable, really good control racket. Again, hitting feeling really great, hold time very great. You can, it makes it very easy to direct the shuttle. And, you know, if there's a question out there of like, you know, if you could only ever use one racket for the rest of your life, or for, you know, whatever, for everything, this would be the racket that I would choose. Like, this is how highly I think of the racket. And this is coming from a guy who currently owns almost 60 rackets. That's 60 rackets. Like, if I had to play with one racket for the rest of my life, it would generally, I think, be this one. This is actually what I use in tournament currently for mixed doubles. For men's doubles, I'll mix it up sometimes, but I certainly can use this. This is the most reliable racket I've ever used. I take that with a grain of salt because, you know, your style might be different than mine, but out of everything that I just said, this is, it's maneuverable. It can be fast when you need it to be. The shaft and frame is easily workable, which means that even under very unfavorable conditions, when my body's not feeling great or the conditions are not great, I can still use this racket to play the game I want to play. The medium stiff shaft means that even in situations where I'm not feeling super great, I can still attack. And yeah, it served me well for several years in tournament, and I always keep coming back to it. I try other rackets in tournament, but I always keep coming back. And so here we have something very interesting. Okay, so now that I've set the stage for you, we have the newest model in Redson's lineup, which is the ESG. And the ESG is kind of the culmination of all of Redson's technology kind of molded into one. And as you can see, this is fully recessed. It's super seamless. There's really nothing preventing the airflow around the edges. This also has some dimples, a little bit less than the MG. And the main point of this racket is that this has no grommets whatsoever. So the other two rackets, they still have grommets for the shared holes, but this one has no shared holes. They're all single pass holes, and it's completely grommetless. And I will give you some close-up shots of this racket in the video, because I think this is a very beautiful racket. One of probably the best looking rackets that I've ever seen. And this one does tend to be a little more expensive than the other two. And just to give you an idea, if you were to purchase the MG or the SG in the US, you can expect, if I remember correctly, it's got to be between $195 to $210, so about $200, which I think is very reasonable compared to top-of-the-line Yonex rackets. If that, you know, if this is something that I prefer to use more often, then yeah, I think that's a good deal. The ESG is priced a little higher. I think it comes in at, don't quote me on this, but mid 200s, maybe slightly higher. And so I was a little concerned that, okay, you know, Redson, if it's getting more popular, starting to price things higher. The whole point was that it was supposed to be affordable, reliable, usable rackets for the amateur player. But I understand why this one is priced higher, because if you look at this close-up footage that I'm putting up for you, the machining and the manufacturing on this racket is absolutely impeccable. Like the attention to detail and the precision required to create the shapes, especially the frame recess where the string sits, is so clean. Like, you know, is this something that this is stuff that like even Yonex isn't doing? And it's really breathtaking to look at up close. Really incredible stuff. So previously and still now, there is only one place in North America where you can buy these rackets, and that is Pro Racket Sport. It's in Bellevue, and they have a website, which I'm going to link in the description. And again, only shop in North America where you can get these. Otherwise, you have to go to Taiwan or Hong Kong or something. And these rackets I got there, and this new shape ESG I also purchased from there. Another detail that I'm going to note is that because there are no grommets on this racket, you have to be very careful about stringing it, right? Because on a normal racket, and even the MG and SG, the knots sit on the shared grommet, kind of in the corner there. And so you can do, you know, all your normal string patterns with this. So, you know, most of the rackets that I get strung have a 4-knot 2-string pattern. The ESG requires you to do a 2-knot pattern, and a very specific one. In fact, if you look closely at the frame, you'll note that some of the holes are marked with little circles there, and apparently those are places where you are able to put the knots. And if you paid attention to the close-up footage of the corners too, you'll see that even these single pass corner holes are even offset very slightly to allow for the strings to kind of pass through and cross each other better. So this is a gripping video, and you can see that all 3 rackets are gripped, so you might be wondering why we're here. And I cheated a little bit because I got this racket back yesterday, and then I went to my local club to play because I was really excited to play with this racket. I only got 1 game in, but I just threw on a random grip over the plastic with some cushion wrap, which means that, you know, now I'm going to actually regrip this, kind of take the plastic off and regrip it properly. I guess this grip is still perfectly good, so we're going to see if we can reuse it, but at the very least, let's take the plastic off. So we'll see. Worth noting, this is actually a 4U model, not a 3U, because I mentioned that the other 2 rackets are 3U. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, this racket is a little more head heavy than the MG or SG, and you'll notice it as soon as you pick it up, that it feels you know, more head heavy and aggressive. And the second reason, but more importantly, is something that you will need to be careful of when buying rackets like this. There are some rackets out there nowadays that come with shrink wrapped handles. So basically they don't have an undergrip, but they have a shrink wrapped handle like this. And this is great for people like me who tend to, you know, not take the undergrip off. It saves us some trouble. Victor in Taiwan also will sell the rackets just with no undergrip whatsoever, so that, you know, it's also very convenient. But the little asterisk here, so the caveat is that when they put the weight class on the racket, at least for Redson, so when it says 4U, 3U, it indicates that weight from the factory off the shelf. Okay, so that means as it is, this is a 4U racket. Okay, whereas my MG with its undergrip was a 3U racket. Okay, now you might see where the issue lies is that the undergrip has some weight to it, which means if I take that undergrip off and then I reapply my overgrip, it's not adding too much extra weight above the original weight of the racket as it sits on the shelf. Now, if I'm taking a shrink-wrapped racket with a handle like this, and this weighs at a 4U as is, and then I go and I grip it, I'm only adding that extra weight, okay? I didn't take any weight away, which means this ends up relatively heavier. And that means with this shrink-wrapped handle as a 4U racket, and I go and I grip that, it's gonna feel more equivalent to a 3U racket that had the undergrip, which I took off, and then I put on a grip again, okay? So these 3U models and this 4U model are gonna be kind of more similar, and you're gonna wanna watch out for that because some of the Redson rackets, they do have these shrink-wrapped grip, and even the MG itself, actually, so this is a blue one, there is a white version, and the white version has the shrink-wrapped grip. And I actually had a 3U version of that, and it was like significantly heavier than this one. So yeah, watch out for that. And you know, if you like the feeling of that, the 3U with the undergrip, and you take it off, and yeah, so you do the math yourself, you figure it out. So let's get started here. And as I mentioned, the ESG, I only got to play with it a little bit, but again, as soon as you pick it up, you'll notice that it feels more aggressive than the MG or the SG. Now, what does that mean exactly, feeling more aggressive? You get a little bit more of that weight in the head, but you still get that fast swinging feeling, okay? So you have this feeling that you can really load that power into the head. And because this is probably the most seamless frame recess I've ever seen, this thing swings quite fast. It's not a sword frame, but it is super, super smooth, like butter through the air. Again, I didn't get to play with it that much, but everything that was good about the other Redson rackets is here. And, oh, actually, no. I remember what I was gonna do. I was gonna put the blue grip on it because I think this would look better with the racket. It's not quite the same color, but it's cute, and we like cute things, so that's what we're gonna do here. And I'll try to use that orange grip for a different racket, perhaps. Yeah. And because it was shrink wrapped already, there wasn't a lot of work to do, which is why I did so much rambling at the beginning of the video. So hopefully that was interesting for you. For those of you watching this who don't know or have never seen a Redson racket, I encourage you to try to find one to purchase or play with if you have the chance, because it's really unique, and at least here in America, in the Seattle area, I think everyone who has switched and started using Redson rackets, like everyone says that it works out well for them and they really like it. So just putting that out there. There's a lot to like. And I mean, like, who doesn't like it when they're when your smashes and your clears sound more crisp and loud, right? Like, sound is kind of, you can say that sound is kind of a lame reason to buy a racket, and well, it certainly wouldn't be a top priority for me, but you know, it's definitely not a detriment in any way, shape, or form. Like, you know, the fact that these rackets sound good, sound better than anything is pretty cool. So especially if you get a good badminton hall that has a nice resonant echo in it. It reminds me of one time in the south of Seattle, there's this church, and the church has like a recreational gym, like a little recreational gym room or something, like a hall. And I was playing a league, and one of the league games, I had to go to this church to play, and they were like, yeah, so we have a church, and the church has badminton courts in it, and yeah, so we can go play there. And I was like, whoa, that's very interesting. That's kind of strange. But you know by now that I am a big fan of like weird, strange, interesting things when it comes to badminton. So I really wanted to go see what this badminton church was about. And so I went there, and and they also mentioned that their court surface was carpet, and that had me even more interested, right? Because it's like, you know, in tennis, there's like clay and there's grass and there's hard courts and whatever. In badminton's like, okay, yeah, you get hard courts, right? There's like school gyms, there's wood, and you get mat courts, and that's about it, right? The surface doesn't really play that much of a role. And so I'm like, okay, carpet, that's interesting. Like, I have to see this for myself. And so we get there, and sure enough, the court surface is a carpet, but it's not like a fluffy carpet that you would find in a house. It's like, if you've ever been into like an office building with a carpet, it's like an industrial carpet that's like very firm. And it's it turns out it's very grippy. So there's no problems there. It's pretty low impact because it's industrial carpet, so it's like shock absorption is definitely there. It doesn't have as much rebound, but like, you know, it was interesting. My shoes were completely clean afterwards because, again, it's carpet, so there's no dust, and it even scrubbed my shoes clean, which was kind of cool. Yeah. The only thing is, you really, really do not want to dive on the carpet court. I did that, and I got rug burn, so that was, you know, kind of my fault. But yeah, just use a little bit of common sense, goes a long way. And but the reason I brought it up was because that church had the best sounding hall I've ever heard in my life, and you know, that could be because it's like, if it's a church building, then they're designed to be acoustically superior, right? You know, you need to do some like singing or whatever, or presentations. So the sound in that hall was incredible. Anyways, last thing I'll mention, the strings I have on this are not my usual string, and I kind of forgot to mention that earlier. Usually I do BG66 Ultimax, that's kind of my primary string, or X-Bolt 65 is my secondary. And so we've got a newly released string here, which is a Gosen. It's the Gosen Rhizonic 65. And that is apparently going to be a new competitor towards strings like the 66 Ultimax, which is like medium soft power string. So as far as I can tell, pretty good. It feels actually very similar. In fact, it feels so similar to 66 Ultimax that I actually kind of forgot that I wasn't using my normal string. So take that how you will. If you see this string around and you're a fan of 66 Ultimax, you know, go ahead and give that a try. So with that, we're done with this racket, and thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.